what community groups have to say about this. There's some concerns about it. There's also some insights around what may happen with Starlight or around Starlight Park. So I've been touring the Cross Bronx Expressway and receiving community feedback around that. And so I did that yesterday. And then just this morning, wow, the team is working fast because that photo on the right is from this morning. But we have opened a brand new school in our district. It is the first school and the first dual language Albanian program, not just in the Bronx, not just in New York City, not just in the United States, but in the world. And so we are so proud to be standing with and supporting our Albanian and Kosovar community here in the Bronx by opening a brand new school with a dual language program. And I know it's going to be so helpful in keeping our community feel connected to culture and uplifting and celebrating the beautiful diversity that we have here in New York 14. So moving on to legislative updates, some of what I personally have been working on while I've been in Washington. First and foremost, we have been trying to do everything we can to oppose some of these Con Ed rate hikes that people are experiencing and that are also being proposed in New York State. And so I've been working and organizing the rest of the New York congressional delegation in opposing these rate hikes. I don't need to tell you all how expensive these electricity bills are and how unsustainable they are. And the idea of this proposal of raising these rates even more is just not doable for the majority of us, not just for working families, but for small businesses and even more. So we are doing everything we can to resist and oppose these Con Ed rate hikes. The next thing that I've done is that I recently introduced the 9/11 Immigrant Worker Freedom Act. Many people may not know, but many of the first responders on September 11th have still not received citizenship nor received access to a path to citizenship. So in honor of many of our first responders and cleanup workers that were there after the attacks, we believe that they have more than merited their path to citizenship in the United States. And so we've introduced that and are gaining support for it. The third thing that I've been really working on and that I'm actually quite excited about is the Healthy Start Reauthorization Act. So Healthy Start is a program for maternal and infant health across the United States. It's one of the many programs that has been imperiled during the Trump administration. Healthy Start is a crucial program that is available in all 50 states where mothers with higher risk of birth complications, as well as lower income mothers and working class mothers, can have access to everything from diapers, strollers, formula, but most importantly, they gain access to critical parenting skill training, such as sleep training, breastfeeding support, and more. The Healthy Start program has been a very crucial part of lowering maternal mortality rates in the United States and infant mortality rates in the United States. And the United States has one of the highest maternal and infant mortality rates in the developed world. So Healthy Start has been a crucial part in lowering that. And it has been put on the chopping block in the Trump administration. Now, with so many things at risk, we are doing all that we can for everything that we can. Healthy Start alone has helped over 10,000 mothers in New York 14. And so I've been working with Republican Congresswoman Nicole Malliotakis, who has areas of Brooklyn and Staten Island where many of many families in her district have also relied on Healthy Start to try to build bipartisan support to save this program. I'm very happy to announce that almost against all odds, we received and I was able to secure unanimous approval in the House Energy and Commerce Committee. That means every single Republican and Democrat voted in favor of this legislation. Next up, we're hoping to move it to the House floor, have it brought through the Senate, and have have the president approve it and sign it. So, you know, this is a very dark time. This is a very challenging time. But the thing that I've been saying is that good things can happen still. And this is one small piece of evidence that that may be true. We also have the federal funding deadline that is coming up. We will be getting to that a little bit, I'm sure, in the Q&A. And I've also been an original co-sponsor on introduction of the Block the Bombs Act, which is legislation to ensure that the United States adheres to their own laws in preventing weapons transfers to states that are found in violation of human rights. And that includes, but is not limited to, what we are seeing in Gaza, which I have long described as just a genocide. The United Nations has recently come out with a report just before the UN General Assembly on this. We have the ability to stop an atrocity, and we have the ability to defend human rights everywhere. And lastly, we have the ban on congressional stock trading, which I have introduced as well, alongside also a bipartisan coalition of unlikely allies, both Republican and Democrat. And so we seem to have a lot of momentum on that as well. It's dark times, it's strange times, but sometimes there are opportunities in that. And these are some of the areas where we have built and gained traction despite everything. So those are some of what I've been working on. And then next up, I want to dive into the One Big Beautiful Bill Act. As many of you know, this One Big Beautiful Bill, the Trump administration and the Republican majority in the House and the Senate passed devastating cuts to healthcare and many essential services back in May. And we are hearing, and we've heard a lot about these cuts, but now that that legislation has been passed, some hard deadlines are coming up. And I want to make sure that you all are aware of what is coming, as well as some of the preliminary tools that we are putting together in advance of these deadlines coming up. So we're going to go by topic. First one, the biggest one, is healthcare. The One Big Beautiful Bill Act cuts almost $1 trillion, I believe, in healthcare cuts across the board. You've got Affordable Care Act, ACA, you've got Medicaid, you've got Medicare recipients that are affected by this. But also, even if you have standard insurance through a private insurer or even through your employer, we are all going to be affected by this, because these cuts are going to also be driving up healthcare costs to bear for it. So even if you have private insurance, this is going to be very hard because everything is going to get more expensive, because when you cut our public health system, those costs are going to have to be borne into the private system and distributed as well. But we'll get into that in a bit. Now, the first thing that is important to know is that starting on July 1st of next year, if you have an essential plan in New York, a New York essential plan, Republicans have, in the One Big Beautiful Bill Act, they have passed provisions that make the essential plan no longer possible to exist. And so the essential plan is going to be the New York essential plan. If you are insured by that, it is going to be terminated starting July 1st, 2026. That is how it is currently scheduled, according to the law. And so I'm going to be, in the next slide, we're going to be talking about what you can do and where you can look towards that. Secondly, with Medicaid, most of the Medicaid cuts and changes are going into effect this December, next December, December of 2026. Some of those things include new work requirements, although some of the timings on some of these things will be shifting around. But we have new work requirements, which means that you must report 80 hours a month. But not just that those work requirements are new, they are also changing the frequency with which you need to submit paperwork on work requirements. So right now, as it stands with current work requirements on many programs, you report your work requirement, you report that you're getting a job that is paying you below the income threshold, and you can access some of these programs. Now they are going to be having you report your work and re-report it and re-report it. And if you do not re-report your work, they are aiming to kick people off their insurance. This is something that we have seen when states try to implement this fail. But the Republican majority has decided to proceed with this anyway. Oftentimes, people who are perfectly deserving and perfectly eligible get kicked off because of these arbitrary paperwork requirements and red tape. And the kick of it is that it doesn't even save us the cost that they think it's going to save us, because instead of hiring doctors, you're hiring a lot of bureaucrats and contractors to go through all of the paperwork you just created. And so, this is something, of course, we fought against, but we have Republican majorities in the House and the Senate, and this is what they've enacted. They've also enacted that asylees, refugees, and TPS holders will no longer be eligible for Medicaid. And it also increases those eligibility verifications. So that's a little bit to what I just spoke to. Now, what are some of the things that we can start to look to in order to protect ourselves in this environment? The first thing that I would say is that if you do not already know, especially if you are uninsured or you feel like your insurance status could be at risk, I cannot stress enough, you should know where your nearest community health center is. We have this link here on the slide, but if you are signed up to our newsletter, we will be emailing everyone on our newsletter list these links and these resources. So you should locate your community health center at this link, because community health centers specifically do not turn people away on basis of insurance, and they work as much as possible to provide health care at a free or dramatically reduced cost. So you should know where your nearest community health center is, so that if you need it, when you need it, you know where to go in a way that is going to be the least negatively impacting on your life. The next thing that I would say is that open enrollment plans start soon. This applies to everybody, no matter your insurance. This is the year where a lot of people, if you generally go from open enrollment period, and if you just tend to re-up whatever insurance plan you have, please pay attention to your open enrollment period this year of all years. Explore your ACA, explore the ACA marketplace plans. On October 1st, some of the premium prices are going to go up. And we are seeing, and I am very sorry to be the bearer of bad news, this affects all of us, that ACA marketplace plans, some of them are projected to go up, whether it's your monthly premium or what have you, go up by 75% due to the Republican cuts and changes in their One Big Beautiful Bill Act. So do not assume that your plan that is affordable to you right now, or that you are able to try to swing and make it right now, is going to be somewhere in the same ballpark price and that we can afford to forget it. Look at your marketplace plans this year. Pay attention to them so that you can make sure that the plan that you have, or that you can find a plan that you can afford. You may have to switch this year. The other recommendation that we have is to learn more about NYC Care. This is our city level healthcare programs that also allow different layers of protection for people. And also, there is still a lot of legal uncertainty in how the bill must be interpreted and enacted. So this is a space that is moving and evolving. So you can sign up for updates at this link, info.newyorkstateofhealth.ny.gov. If you sign up, that is going to be the first source of tangible healthcare related plan updates, whether it's the New York State exchange programs, whether it is Medicaid, New York Medicaid rules changes, and more. You're going to get some of the first initial updates if you sign up for updates at that link. And so the state will be, as time goes on, especially as we get closer to the end of the year, the state will be providing many of those updates, and you can be the first to know through that link. So next up, we've got some of the vaccination plan updates. As we've seen, Robert F. Kennedy at HHS has been, there have been a lot of dramatic changes on this. Some of the vaccine council boards have had dismissals of established scientists, and those scientists have been replaced by political appointees, not other career professionals, but political appointees. And so I want to make sure that it is communicated to you all. I'm sure there is a lot of things you might see online. You don't know what memes are real. You don't know what things are not. So here are this is simply the latest update in what we have seen from some of the advisory committees on immunization practices. Now, the advisory committee, the reason this is important for everybody is that this advisory committee makes and establishes the official federal recommendations on immunization. And what that means is that any changes in vaccines or non-vaccines, if they pull a vaccine off this list, if they put a vaccine on this list in general, it affects insurance coverage down the road, what insurers will coverage or won't coverage. It affects federal guidelines. For example, if there are, one of the things that I toured recently was a Office of Refugee Resettlement, sometimes where unaccompanied children are kept, or go to school, get educated, and are prepared. And for example, if you have a child that is unaccompanied, sometimes that is subject to certain guidelines, state and federal vaccination guidelines. So this has broad, long-standing effects. Now, insurers have said that they plan on covering immunizations, the prior immunizations, up until the end of next year. But any changes after 2026, may affect insurance coverage of which immunizations you may or may not choose. So that's why this is important. There have been changes to, the advisory committee has issued changes on the combined measles, mumps, rubella, and chickenpox vaccine. the MMRV, and they have also issued changes to the COVID-19 vaccine. They have open discussion on the hepatitis B vaccine, which is one area where alarm has been raised because any of the discussion around changing or delaying timing on hepatitis B, there's a lot of science around if children who don't receive that Hep B vaccine early enough have a higher exposure to liver damage. So there's a discussion that is happening there in the healthcare scientific community that is being currently monitored. And also New York State has been responding to some of these changing recommendations. There are federal guidelines that affect some of the things that I had just noted, but then there's also state immunization guidelines as well. And so for folks who are concerned about that, the state vaccination requirements are separate and apart from federal vaccination requirements. And oftentimes there are facilities that must meet your local state recommendations as well. So for people who are following this discussion, it's important to understand that that is a very important piece. And the federal guideline changes is not the be-all, end-all of this discussion. There's also a New York City Department of Health and Mental Hygiene immunization hotline at 347-396-2400 if you have any questions or want to avail yourself of any resources regarding some of these changes. Moving on. The next topic that we want to go to is on SNAP and food assistance. Some of the changes that are being enacted in OBBA, there is a program called SNAP Ed. If you are not familiar with that program, then you may not be affected by it. But if you are part of SNAP Ed, that funding ends this month. SNAP overall is going to be expanding work requirements for people ages 18 to 64. They are going to be removing exemptions for veterans, homeless individuals, and foster youth that they have within the program. They are narrowing exemptions on SNAP for parents of children, only if your child is under 14. And it also is going to add additional restrictions based on immigration status. Now, the date that these changes are going to occur is not set in stone. They will basically be enacted when the Trump administration starts to issue implementation guidance. So basically, when the administration begins to interpret the law and say, this is how you enforce and this is how you enact it, then the agencies are going to move forward with that. So we, unfortunately, do not have a date on when that is going to happen. We just know what is the content of the law. Now, what can we do to prepare and what is happening in order to stem some of this? First and foremost, as we mentioned on the state level, New York State just passed a new law enacting universal free school breakfast and lunch. No matter your income, no matter your background, the state will be enacting universal free school breakfast and free school lunch. So in a time when groceries are skyrocketing and it's really hard to afford all of this, at least for some of our families, we're going to be experiencing some relief in your ability to avail yourself and every child being able to avail themselves of free school breakfast and free lunch. Of course, if you still want to pack a lunch, you can do that. But this should help. This should chip away at some of that for our families across the state. Also, make sure you know where a food bank is near you, feedingnewyorkstate.org/need-food. And once again, to check for updates at this link, because these SNAP cuts have not been implemented yet. When we do find out when that date is, you will likely hear from this update first. So that's some of the ways that we can see what's coming and how we navigate around that. Next up, some of the changes around immigration contained in the One Big Beautiful Bill Act. Around immigration enforcement, this is probably one of the most dramatic institutional shifts when it comes to immigration that is contained in this. For all of the talk about cuts and efficiency and bringing down budgets, this program essentially cuts billions and billions and billions of dollars from our healthcare system and our food assistance system, and it plows it into dramatically expanding immigration enforcement. And by immigration enforcement, I do not mean that they are expanding visa processing. They are not expanding helping people come the right way. They are not making investments in expanding the legal pathways. They are expanding ICE to a level that is unseen and unheard of in American history. They're not expanding it by 10%, 20%, 30%, 40%. They are exploding the infrastructure of ICE, which is acting extrajudicially and is not held accountable, and is not accountable to the same rigorous standards of any other law enforcement agency. So that includes $170 billion immediately to ICE. And they're cutting nearly $1 trillion from our healthcare system, and they're putting $170 billion immediately into ICE, $30 billion to recruit 10,000 more deportation officers, and $45 billion for detention expansion. And by detention expansion, I want people to hear for-profit prisons, for-profit detention centers. This is going to publicly traded companies that construct and build and profit off of immigration detention. So we're not even using public facilities for this. This is a dramatic expansion of private companies that will be holding immigrants, often, as we have seen, many incidents that are in violation of civil rights and laws that we have on the books. In addition to that, not only is this administration expanding that enforcement and making it harder to come here legally, they are also jacking up the filing fees to make it even harder to come the right way. They are punishing in implementing taxes, essentially a penalty through increased filing fees for people who are trying to do their best to be documented and remain documented. So if you have an asylum application, they are now asking for $100 upfront and $100 per year that your application is pending. And if you have an asylum application, you know that they can go on for many years. TPS registration, they are now increasing that fee waiver, that fee from $50 to apply for TPS to $500 to apply for TPS. And please understand that asylum and TPS applications are specifically for families and people who are already escaping the most dire circumstances in the world, from Ukraine to Ecuador to places experiencing unspeakable hardship. This administration is now jacking up those filing fees. The motion to reopen a case is increasing from $145 maximum to over $1,000. And we are also, they are also charging a filing fee for an initial work permit based on those prior applications to $550. Imagine that you come to this country and you are trying to legally work. So you don't have a job. You are trying to participate in our economy, which has a lot of need, and you are trying to contribute, and they're going to charge you to try to have a job, on top of all of those other filing fees that we just mentioned. So that's what they're doing. But what can you do to prepare? If you are concerned about your documentation status, I cannot stress enough. Please proactively find and retain legal help. Once you are detained, if you do not have a lawyer that you have connected with, if you end up for any reason being detained and you don't already have a lawyer, it is extremely difficult in our system, which does not extend the same legal protections as if you are, if you are jailed by non-immigration court or non-immigration facilities where you have certain legal rights. If you are detained in this situation, you must please have a lawyer prior to that detention who can advocate on your behalf from the outside. Outside of that, it is very, very challenging. I would also ask, I have a QR code here. Please fill out a privacy release ahead of any ICE check-ins with my office. Now, this form is labeled as a DHS privacy release waiver, but this form is held by me. When you turn in this form, I keep it, my office keeps it. This form is only used if you are detained. It allows me and it allows my office to contact DHS on your or your family's behalf because you have given me the permission to do so. This paper is you giving me, as your congresswoman, permission to engage in your case on your behalf because you are allowing a privacy release to me. And so we take our responsibility around confidentiality very seriously. But similarly, if we do not have this privacy release before any incident where you may be detained, I am not allowed to intervene on your behalf. So if you have an ICE check-in coming up, please submit this form to my office. If anything happens, you, your loved ones, etc., may be able to reach out to my office and we can explore and examine what is happening in your case. So that is a step that I implore you all to take today. Now we're moving to the energy portion of some of these impacts on OBBA. Now some of the provisions in this bill are going to be resulting in energy price increases. One of the big reasons for that is that the Trump administration is narrowing, instead of supporting all sorts of energy infrastructure, they are canceling, repealing more affordable renewable energy projects, and they are forcing through preference for more, even in instances where it's more expensive, oil and gas. So between that and some other strains on our system, we are looking at some documented increases in our energy bills due to the federal government changes in the OBBA. It hurts. It's something that's going to be hurting all of us. If you are having trouble affording your energy bill, or if you feel like you are getting to a place where you may be starting to struggle to afford your energy bill, you may be eligible for the Home Energy Assistance Program, HEAP. If you are not in HEAP, definitely look into it. Enrollment begins typically around November 1st. So this is coming up in about a month. So if you've got a calendar up on November 1st, please make sure to check your eligibility for HEAP. HEAP can provide credits on your energy bill and help bring the costs down. Now, eligibility for HEAP I wish I could say that if you make above or below a certain amount, you are eligible for HEAP, or if you are in this geographic area, you are eligible for HEAP. But HEAP has a lot of different factors that determine eligibility. So you may be eligible for HEAP and you may not even know it. So you can apply online at access.nyc.gov. Check your eligibility for HEAP. That may really help bring down your energy bill in the next year, which is expected to rise due to the federal government's cuts in the OBBA. Next up, some additional impacts on energy. The Trump administration is ending many of the renewable and home energy efficiency tax benefits. And so many of them are expiring soon. The $7,500 tax credit for electric vehicles will expire on September 30th. So if you happen to be in a scenario where you are considering getting an electric vehicle, I may need folks to fact check me on this, but I think some iterations of this credit also apply to used vehicles. So whether it's brand new or not, we can clarify on that. But either way, you've got a week. If you are on the bubble of buying a new car, and if you're considering an electric vehicle, that $7,500 tax credit expires in 5 days. So you've got 5 days to buy the car if you've got if you're interested or in the market for that tax credit. Additionally, other tax credits, if you are a homeowner, up to $3,200 for home energy upgrades are expiring at the end of the year. So you have until the end of December, if you own a home and you are considering upgrading your insulation for energy efficiency purposes to bring down your energy bills. If you have been considering upgrading your exterior windows and doors, HVAC, getting a heat pump, battery storage, solar panels, a home energy audit, all of those things that there are tax credits for, they expire at the end of the year. So if you are also considering any of these changes, I would recommend, if you want to save money on it and do it as cheaply as possible, do it before the end of the year so that you can take advantage of these tax credits, because they will no longer be available after December 31st, I imagine, after the end of the year, after 2025. Next up, some other district updates and what we've been up to. We have been hosting student loan webinars on changes. If you are in any number of federal student loan repayment programs, we have been hosting webinars which are available. We've been hosting those webinars to walk people through their options there with more specifics. We've also been hosting Know Your Rights seminars when it comes to ICE, which have actually been tremendously successful in our district. An educated community is an empowered community. and we do not have to be governed by fear, even in this scary time. When you know your rights, you can prevent your rights from being violated. And so our Know Your Rights seminars have been very successful in ensuring that everyone follows the law, including ICE. And as we've seen, Tom Homan, who was trying to intimidate many of us and saying that they were going to try to open federal investigations. He got apparently with reporting that he may have taken 50 grand in a kava bag. So we got to keep them accountable, and knowing your rights is one way of doing that, and you can help defend your neighbors too. But it's not surprising to me that the head of an agency that is breaking the law himself was being investigated as such. Anyways, moving on. We've got our Congressional App Challenge coming up on the bright side of things. Please submit by October 30th, and our Service Academy applications for graduating seniors also due by October 30th. So that's wrapping up on that. I'm not going to be ending in 7 minutes. Don't worry, I do have to take questions, but there was so much we had to cover, y'all, so there we go. And let's move to the Q&A.
We will now be taking questions from the audience. Our first question is from Eric from Jackson Heights. Eric asks, I'm a federal employee worried that the shutdown will impact employment. How are you managing the risks that a shutdown might just give the Trump administration the political cover it needs to destroy the bureaucracy once and for all? I have already sacrificed a great deal personally this year to stand up to the Trump administration, and it feels unfair that this burden may once again fall on us, relatively powerless civil servants.
Mm-hmm. Well, Eric, I can't underscore enough the point that you raise, which is that in all of this moment, throughout all of these moments, it is federal employees have taken enormous and have made enormous sacrifices during this time at the hands of the Trump administration. This, of course, intersects with the upcoming federal government shutdown deadline. And I want to talk a little bit about the intersection of both of those things. First and foremost, the responsibility and decisions around government shutdown, they largely reside in who's in charge with the House, the Senate, and the White House, which is Republicans have the House majority, the Senate majority, and Donald Trump has the White House. I want to say a couple of things about this. The prospect of government shutdowns are taken extremely seriously. This is why when we have Democratic majorities, we work very hard to ensure that government shutdowns don't happen. The last time we had a very serious government shutdown was during the first Trump administration, where that shutdown lasted a very long time. It was, in fact, the year that I was sworn in. It was the first time in history that a new Congress was sworn in to a shutdown government. Now, I want to speak to the fact of the federal employees being affected. What we saw at the beginning of the year with DOGE, mass layoffs, and all of these tremendous cuts that were happening at federal agencies, those cuts and those layoffs happened when the Trump administration's government was open. And it's important to remember that because the Trump administration enacts all of these cuts and layoffs when they want to, when it was open. And what we've seen, there's what the Trump administration says, and there's also what the Trump administration does. The Trump administration said they were, in the beginning of this year, said they were going to lay off and freeze a bunch of programs and agencies. They did force layoffs of many people. They offered these buyouts, and they also had dramatic and illegal freezes on certain programs and distributions. Now, fast forward, what we've actually been seeing is that the Trump administration has quietly been rehiring and trying to rehire many of the people that they laid off earlier this year. So while their words are threatening to do in a shutdown what they've already been doing when the government is open, their actions show that they know that they messed up because they are scrambling to rehire the workers that they are once again threatening. This chaos is very difficult to navigate because your point that you are that of the risk that the administration may be trying to use this shutdown as political cover for these other cuts. It's a justified one. It's a justified concern. What is hard is that the Trump administration has been so chaotic and inconsistent that is very difficult to know and to believe their word, including their threats, especially when they are already trying to rehire the workers that they themselves, in their actions, are acknowledging that they unjustly and not smartly fired. And so one of the things that we are trying to do is to navigate their chaos, the fact that they have the majority in the House, they have the majority in the Senate, and they have the White House. But make no mistake, if the government shuts down, like with everything else, they're going to act like it wasn't their decision. It is their decision. And what we simply, in any government, a compromise is important, and we have to make sure that we do this. So we are being extremely, extremely sensitive to this. We are not trying to navigate this cavalierly, because you are completely correct. Federal workers are at risk, have been at risk, and the Trump administration has been engaging in all of this activity when the government is open. So we want to make sure that that we're approaching that as cautiously as we can. Next question.
Okay, our next question comes from Gene from Soundview. How will Donald Trump's big, beautiful bill affect the people that have Section 8 currently? Please thoroughly answer this question.
So thank you. I want to make sure that I really dive into these questions about Section 8. Now, at the very top, the One Big Beautiful Bill Act actually does not touch Section 8 extensively, because that legislation affects what is known as mandatory spending, as opposed to discretionary, something that is known as discretionary spending. And Section 8 is under that umbrella of funds that the OBBA is not considering. That being said, just because the OBBA is not touching Section 8 does not mean that the Trump administration is not touching Section 8. So I want to explain to you some of the changes that the Trump administration is eyeing and attempting to affect Section 8 residents. The first part of this is that the House Appropriations Bill, which is the other Republican budget bill, is seeking to cut the total amount of funds to public housing authorities to spend on Section 8 vouchers by at least $2 billion. And not only that, but their bill, there is a provision in there that would allow NYCHAs and public housing authorities across the country to raise rents on people above that 30% income threshold. So while the OBBA does not touch Section 8, The proposed Republican appropriations bill will have that effect on Section 8. The good news is that it has not passed yet. We do not know where it is tracking, but it has not been enacted yet. So we are keeping a very close eye on any developments with respect to that. But that bill has not yet moved, and we will see if it does move. But that is something that we are tracking very closely. Another thing that we are tracking closely is that the Trump administration may be proposing a mixed status rule around mixed status families and their eligibility for NYCHA. We do not have a date for that, but we are working closely, and I met with the NYCHA CEO as well as several other leaders at NYCHA for how we would prepare and anticipate for any rule change there. And also, the other thing that the Trump administration is doing is that during the Biden administration, we passed something known as the American Rescue Plan. That included emergency housing or emergency housing vouchers for people in public housing and in general. That program, if you are in Section 8, if you are in public housing and you are using an emergency housing voucher, that was supposed to last until 2030. The Trump administration is now trying to sunset that to next year. And I want you to know that we have gotten ahead of it. And I've been working very closely with NYCHA officials to ensure that people on emergency housing vouchers can experience a continuity of housing and be as impacted as little as possible by the sunsetting of that program. So those are some of the most specific Section 8 related programs, updates that I have for you. But again, we will be monitoring that appropriations bill very closely. That's the vehicle that's going to have the Section 8 implications. But right now, the OBBA largely does not touch Section 8.
Maureen S. from Jackson Heights asks, could you please briefly touch on what you are doing or have recently done on behalf of your senior citizen constituents? Most of the news lately has been about the needs of younger people and working families, which is important, but a little reminder for everyone about what your plans are for seniors would be a big help.
Yeah, absolutely. So, of course, our seniors in our community are such an enormous priority for me, my office, and also nationally. So I'd be happy to talk about some of the things, even hyperlocally, as well as nationally, that we're championing. But I will start nationally with the big picture. I am a vocal and very strong proponent for Medicare expansion, as well as Social Security expansion as well. Now, when it comes to Medicare expansion, what specifically have I really been burrowing in on? One of those things is long-term care. Having Medicare as well as our Medicaid system expand to increase our ability to cover home health care and long-term care so that seniors in our community can age in place. For those who wish to age elsewhere in communities, that there's also increased assistance there. I've also been fighting very hard on making sure that we expand Medicare to include vision and dental insurance. To me, this is a no-brainer. The fact that health insurance doesn't already cover our eyes and our mouths, which are also very crucial in terms of other healthcare needs. That doesn't make any sense to me, but we are fighting to make sure that we expand Medicare to do that. On Social Security, we're also working very hard to lift the tax cap on Social Security. Right now, you are being taxed on Social Security. The people being taxed on Social Security make up to $250,000 a year. If you make more than that, you don't really pay more proportionately. And so billionaires like Mark Zuckerberg and Jeff Bezos have a similar Social Security tax bill. We think that in order for us to expand and lengthen the viability of Social Security, if we want to expand what Social Security can cover and to more accurately meet people's daily needs, we need to lift the cap on Social Security so that we can make sure that we stabilize it, enhance it. I am a proud co-sponsor of the Social Security, I think it's called Social Security 2100 Act, covered by John Larson. And many of the provisions in that bill do much of that. We're also under the Biden administration. I worked very hard to cap the cost of prescription drugs at $2,500 for those covered under Medicare Part D. And also, even on the local front, I have to let people know that after so many years of advocacy, we finally got the ADA ramp at the Jackson Heights post office. This is a huge thank you to so many of our community groups and partners and just individual people speaking up about this. We were finally, for people who may have been tracking this issue, the post office has not had a ramp so that our seniors, people with disabilities, strollers, etc., couldn't access the post office. And we have finally been able to wrangle USPS into doing that. And so if you have been avoiding the Jackson Heights post office because you could not access it, we finally got a ramp put in there and you can walk by as well. So from the little details to the big picture, our seniors remain such an important part of our community, and we continue to make sure that we fight for them.
Okay, our next question will be the last question, Congresswoman. Maureen D. from Astoria asks, what are the actions we should be taking right now as individuals concerned about the way the country is moving towards fascism?
Very good question. I want to take this moment to really speak to all of us about this issue. In a time like this, it is very important to understand that authoritarians rely on the perception of power, not on the reality that they have power. They need people to believe that they are more powerful than they actually are. And that is why it is very important for us to even just mentally recognize that. Donald Trump is less popular than he has ever been. He is underwater on virtually every issue. If you oppose and are disgusted by what this administration is doing, you are in the company of a majority of Americans. You are not alone. More people disapprove and are opposed to this administration right now than they are in support of this administration. Those are the numbers. In order to mask that reality, Donald Trump is trying to take control of the media using kind of extortion style tactics. We all saw what happened with Jimmy Kimmel. We all saw earlier this year what CBS did with Stephen Colbert. These are not just small or flippant things. These are exercises in power. And when I say what we can do as individuals, the reason I highlight this is because it is an excellent case study in how powerful our individual actions are. CBS announced that they were ending Stephen Colbert's show after after some, I'm trying to even recall what Colbert had said, critical of the Trump administration, but nevertheless, they announced out of nowhere the ending of his show. And the Trump administration, as we have seen, has threatened the FCC licenses of people who air their political critics. Now, as we said, what the Trump administration says it's going to do versus what it is actually capable of are two different things. They rely on everyone complying in advance out of fear. We cannot be scared of this administration. The risks are very real. We must look after one another. The impacts are devastating, but in moments where they want us to comply in advance and we have the ability and the choice not to, we should exercise that. What that also means is that where CBS made this choice, the cowardly choice around complying in advance, what happened with ABC is that they also tried to comply in advance. But you all and everyday people started to take matters into our own hands. ABC is owned by Disney, and people started to say, if you comply with authoritarianism, we are going to vote with our pocketbook. There were widespread cancellations of subscriptions, whether it's your streaming subscription, whether it was people's family vacations, and they started voting with their pocketbooks. And it works. It works. You can just ask Target earlier this year when they announced that they were going to comply in advance by trying to eliminate all of their DEI programs in order to appease the Trump administration. People voted with their pocketbook and they said, we're not going to go to Target anymore. And they have been paying the price. And since they've paid that price, and since people have been voting with their pocketbook, they, in lots of institutions, have started to change course. So it may sound silly, and cynical people may say that your streaming service doesn't matter, or that this little individual choice won't make a difference. It does, because one of the largest corporations on earth, which is the Disney Corporation, and ABC, was going to comply in advance. They did for a moment by pulling Jimmy Kimmel off the air. And because of you and everyday people not choosing to listen to the cynics that say canceling your subscription isn't going to do anything, people started acting with their hearts and they started acting in alignment with themselves. And those boycotts changed the course. I can't even imagine the consequences of the Disney Corporation bringing themselves to heel for the Trump administration around their threats to the FCC. Those boycotts alone likely prevented a mass consolidation of political influence at the FCC around broadcast licenses. So I want to encourage each and every one of you, when a cynic says protesting doesn't matter, or boycotting or canceling a subscription or making different choices doesn't matter, do not listen to them. Don't listen to the cynics. This is a time where if even the most small thing you can do is speak up at work for someone that isn't being protected, that matters, because all of these institutional erasures trickle down, and all it takes is one person sticking up for somebody else, making a different choice, preparing their community, welcoming our neighbor, that can truly, genuinely, authentically change the course of this country. do not lose hope, because as someone who has been traveling this country and has been going to some of the reddest states in this country, in Idaho, Utah, Montana, I can tell you that something is changing. People are changing, and we have to stay encouraged. We have no other choice. This is not the country we want to live in, and so we have to make the country that we do want to live in. And so I can't thank each and every one of you for keeping the faith, for saying, even if I just have this tiny little pocket, I'm going to do what I can in this pocket. Your individual choices matter. And I cannot thank you enough. And I think as things go on, we experiment, and we've seen these boycotts work. The boycott of Target worked. The boycott of ABC worked. And so keep that in the back of your mind and keep the faith. Bye, everyone.